Welcome to Geological Shop Talk. In this podcast, we bring you roughly 20 to 25 minutes of practical clinical methods, perspectives, and advice that has its work boots on. Listen in for clinical gems that you can begin to investigate the next time that you walk into clinic. Additionally, visit the show notes page for supporting materials from this week's guest on Shop Talk. All right, friends, roll up your sleeves. Let's get to work. This episode of Shop Talk is brought to you by LASA OMS, your clinic's partner in wellness. LASA has a special offer for you. Listen for it later in the show. The information shared on this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not intended as medical advice. Always consult a qualified licensed healthcare professional before making any decisions about your health or treatment. The host and guests are not responsible for any actions taken based on the content of this podcast. Welcome to the first in our series on reproductive health. I am delighted to have Lorne Brown with us today on this Shop Talk to discuss perimenopause. All y'all probably know a little bit about Lorne. He is the founder of Healthy Seminars, fantastic site if you want to learn more about medicine. He's the founder of AcuBalance Wellness Center. He is the host also of his own podcast, Coherence Code Podcast, and the chair of the Integrative Fertility Symposium. He's a busy guy. He's also written a book, Getting to the Point. If you want to know something about building your acupuncture practice, Lorne's book is fantastic. He's been focused on fertility and reproductive health for I don't know how long. Lorne, welcome to Shop Talk. Delighted to have you here. Today we're going to talk about perimenopause.
Yeah, thanks. I'm so glad to be on your show. And it's been since 2000, so well over 2 decades now.
Well over 2 decades. Isn't that weird saying 2 decades? Like how long you been at it? Well, decades.
Yeah, it's over 25 years at the time of this recording. So yeah, and working with reproductive health, so fertility as well as pregnancy, and then perimenopause, menopause. Since I'm in my late 50s, my wife's in her early 50s, and the patients who I've grown up with, the majority of them are perimenopause or menopausal. So it's perfect that we're talking about this today.
Great. So let's jump into it. What's the thing? I know that a lot of the women that come into my clinic, the first thing they talk about is the H word.
Oh, hormones.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you my approach, and I want to share with my colleagues kind of how you can bring this into your practice and really get patients engaged so you can support them so they don't have to suffer. And you talk about hormones, the H word. Right now, at the time of this recording, there is a resurgence of, they rebrand it to menopause hormone therapy from hormone replacement therapy. And what's really good is that there's a conversation about women in their 40s and 50s that these signs and symptoms, they shouldn't need to suffer, because that's what was happening. Women were being dismissed by their physicians, whether it was a male or female physician. They're being dismissed. Don't worry about it. Or here's an antidepressant for the mood. Or here's some NSAIDs and anti-inflammatories for the aches and pains you have. All these, so they weren't getting to the underlying cause, and they're giving a Band-Aid approach. And even the Band-Aid approach wasn't addressing the main issue. In the West, their tool is hormones. And so I want to talk about how I see it through the lens of Chinese medicine. And our goal here is women shouldn't need to suffer. Like if you're having extreme night sweats, hot flashes, if you're having insomnia, brain fog, if you're having urogenital symptoms, it's unnecessary and you should not suffer. And there's many tools out there. And for some women, they will benefit and may need hormone replacement therapy or menopause hormone therapy. Chinese medicine offers an incredible modalities to help find that balance, to help women get regulated again so they no longer are suffering and alleviating those symptoms. What I want to share that I have found in my, again, over 25 years of clinical experience, one is how you have this conversation with women to give them kind of our map, our understanding of what's going on, and how we can get to the underlying cause so that they want to receive treatment from you. So first you have to talk their language. So I don't usually go right into yin-yang theory with my patients. I try to use a Western language. And what I have noticed is, first of all, perimenopause and menopause is not a hormone issue. People are like, what? It's not because of changing.
I know that's a real game changer. I mean, it's a real mind expander, isn't it? What? How could it not be hormones?
How can it not be hormones? So let's talk about this. We know that hormones are fluctuating. So in the perimenopause, so the years leading up to menopause, there's a fluctuation, specifically estrogen spiking. So it's up and down. And there's a decline in progesterone. So we know that's happening. And then once the period stops, you're in menopause, there is a big decline in both estrogen and progesterone. So if it was a hormonal problem, if that was the underlying cause, then every single woman would suffer that lives to their 60s. But we know that not every woman has symptoms during the perimenopause and menopause phases of their life. But yet, every woman, mostly, if they weren't premature ovarian, let's rule out POI, premature ovarian insufficiency in the younger ages, where they stop menstruating. Let's rule out surgical induced menopause. In general, so we're talking general here, women that are going to go through the perimenopause and menopause phase of their life, it's not a pathology, it's not a disease, just like we don't think puberty is a disease, although those who have teenage daughters may argue with me. But, puberty is the first spring and menopause is the second spring. And my teachers, my understanding is the resources that went to the uterus to help gestate a child, a baby, is now being redirected, so you don't menstruate anymore, and it's being redirected to the heart, to the shen, so you can be available, mother, nurture your community, right? So, and it's also a form of, it's a survival mechanism because childbearing takes a lot of energy resources, and as we get older, 7 times 5, Yang Min declines, 7 times 749, the Ren and Chang, Chang Gui is empty. So if we're going to live long and well, we need to direct our resources from reproducing to other areas of our body. So it sounds like it's a survival mechanism in the body and innate wisdom to stop that as well for women. So it's not a pathology. Going back to the hormone issue, since all women are going to have fluctuating hormones, I got to use my words impeccable. Majority of women that are menstruating will have a fluctuating of estrogen and a decline in progesterone, then a decline in both. Don't all have symptoms and don't all have the same symptoms. I'm saying then it can't be the hormones. That's my first point.
Right. Well, this is something that we're very clear with East Asian medicine, that people can have different influences that come their way, but based on who they are, their constitution, whatever strength they have, whatever vulnerabilities they have, they will respond differently to the environment.
Yes, and that's the key, the environment. So the obvious thing is when we have in the environment, so externally, when we have changes, that's a form of stress. And if we have the resilience and the capacity to adapt and pivot to change, we don't experience uncomfortable symptoms because we're able to adapt. And to be able to adapt and pivot, you must have capacity, resilience. As we get older, our window of tolerance shrinks. That's part of aging. That's why you don't see too many 80-year-olds win gold medals in the Olympics, right? Our window of tolerance changes. And so as these things change in the body, as hormones are fluctuating, changing, it's a change, but it's an internal change. So you may not be consciously aware of it at first, but there's change happening. And if you have resilience, think of strong kidney, good gene, good essence, and you have the ability to adapt to change, think of the liver mechanism, then as your hormones are fluctuating, the estrogen's up and down, progesterone's declining, and then they both decline, you don't notice anything because behind the scenes, your body has the capacity and resilience to adapt. And so it's adapting without you knowing. You are symptom-free. If during these internal changes of hormones fluctuating and declining, you don't have the capacity and resilience, therefore you're not able to adapt, you start to experience night sweats, hot flashes, insomnia, brain fog, joint pain, urinary frequency, urgency, skin changes, mast cell hives, etc., brain fog, if I hadn't said that one. So it's just a message. The body's always giving us messages. And so the first aspect where you would know as a practitioner and all of our practitioners listening, We know that as we age, we lose some of our kidney, and if we our kidney energy. And so some of us are born inherently, our prenatal gene, our prenatal kidney energy is just weak. So they may be the people that are going to have a harder time. So hopefully they lived a good life, right, to protect that. If you did the sex, drugs, rock and roll in your teens, in your 20s and 30s and 40s, you may, even if you were given ample kidney energy, you may have excessively burned it off, and so you don't have as much available. Because in general, once you hit that 50 mark anyhow, you're more than half your jinx, right? And so there's that. Then think about life, the internet, all the different opinions people have. Everybody feels offended by somebody. You have stored up resentment. You have all this stored up energy. We know how this affects the liver mechanism. And so now you have a jammed up liver system because you can't escape it. Like before, you had to, every week you may hear something about the news. Now it's every minute. It's in your news feeds. Like you can't not get inundated by bad news in the world. And people, if you wanted to hear somebody's opinion, they would have to write to the letter to an editor, right? And maybe it got printed, right? So everybody has their opinions, but only one or two got heard once a week in the newspaper. Everybody still has their opinions.
Yes, and now it's a deluge.
Now everybody has access to give you access to their opinions. Before we didn't, and somebody was vetting it. So we're inundated. So my point here is just living at this time, we have more things that could probably jam up our liver mechanism. We have changes in diet, we have chemicals in the environment, and just the emotional side. So my point to make here is what we address then from a Chinese medicine perspective is you're always going to go back to what's in front of you, what's really happening, what is presenting. Don't get fooled, don't get distracted by the term perimenopause or menopause. It's not how our medicine addresses health or illness in the body. Knowing they're in their 40s or 50s, you can tell, okay, things are happening to the kidneys for women, the blood and yin, things are changing. So we know there's some changes in general, just like we know somebody at 80 is not the same as they were in their 20s, right? Things are going to change. But at the end, how are they presenting? So how you treat it is going to be what's presenting, and so treat the presentation. Don't make the mistake, oh, they have night sweats and their estrogen is low, therefore their kidney yin deficiency. That probably would lead you, most cases, not down the right path. So don't go estrogen deficiency equals yin deficiency. I don't recommend that. I recommend looking at them with fresh eyes and seeing their signs and symptoms. In our Unhealthy seminar, Sharon Weisenbaum has an incredible course on key intake skills and talks about see what you see. The pearl that I want to share with the audience, though, is what I've seen work in clinic. So there's theory, and I'll tell you my clinical experience. So one is I'm always looking at, when I've seen these signs and symptoms, I'm thinking about resilience. So is it the kidney system? Is it Jing? Is it yin yang? Is it more of a blood deficiency, a chi deficiency? Like I'm seeing because what shows up as resilience can show up in different ways. What's deficient? Where is the deficiency? And I'm curious about the liver mechanism because they're not adapting. So usually I'm looking for those kidney liver signs and symptoms of what's going on, but there could be a multiple. Like I'm in Vancouver, BC in my practice. I don't see a lot of the dry, thin type women. I see some. Most of them aren't running hot and warm that way. Most of them are more the yang, they're cold. Now having hot flashes, but when they're not having hot flashes, they're very cold. Right? So I'm going to address that differently than the thin woman that's warm and then has hot flashes versus the woman that's a more damp body type that's cold that has hot flashes. They both have hot flashes, but everything else is very different. So they're going to get a different treatment. What everybody can take away from this that's worked for me, and I have associates that works for them as well, so it has nothing to do with me, it's the approach. I have them come in 3 times a week for acupuncture for at least 2 to 3 weeks. I do this because I want to get a change because they need to see results.
So you really want to get ahead of the game with this. You really want to get a change going quickly.
And I'm doing herbs at the same time, everybody. So I'm an herbalist too. So I'm using acupuncture and herbs. So you want the momentum. You want to see results. And like anything else, if I go to the gym once a week versus 3 times a week, in 3 weeks, I'm going to have very different results. If I study for an exam once a week versus 3 times a week, I'm going to get a different grade when I write the exam. So now I know I'm going to play Michael, I'm going to get pushback. That's a lot, this and that. Yes, but people want results. So it's my role with integrity to say, based on my skill set and my experience, this is what I know can help and work. And I'll give you a couple of examples, because if they understand, I tell them this is what's expected, what I think will help, and then they get to choose. So I'm going to give you 2 scenarios. One just around pain. Early on when I was a young practitioner, I saw somebody coming in for pain. I had read the research, got translated into English, and I noticed that when they were treating pain, most of the research was 5 times a week, not once a week, or 3 times a week. Very rarely was it a once a week treatment. And so when patients came in, I started saying, I want to see you 3 times a week for 3 weeks, right? Or 3 times a week, twice a week, and then we'll reassess was more common. Now, they would already have seen somebody. So they've come in and said, I've already seen somebody, and I've seen them 6 times. So they came once a week for 6 visits. When I treated them...
Right, and how did that go?
Well, they came to see me, so it didn't work. When they came to see me, I remember a couple times they're like, these are the same points that my acupuncturist did, right? Like when I was treating them, they're like, this is very similar to what my other acupuncturists did. And I said, yes, you said you did it once a week. Their treatment was great. Their dosage was off. So let's do 3 times this week, 3 times next week. Usually by that 3rd visit in the week, they're already seeing good change, which motivates them to continue the treatment. So it was the dosage. I'm going to explain another patient. This is recent. I have a woman who's 82 that has a lot of pain, back pain, sciatic pain. And she came to see me after seeing an acupuncturist. And she said the other acupuncturist was no good. I was recommended to you. So I asked, why do you know the other acupuncturist was no good? And she said, well, it didn't work. And I said, how many times did you go? She goes, I went once. So I said, if you're going to start with me, you're going to come in 3 times a week for 2 weeks. And I'm hoping you feel a difference obviously after the first visit, but that's not my expectation. You're 80 years old, she has stenosis, and she has some piriformis around the muscle. That part, the piriformis part, is usually easier, stenosis. And how I explained it, I'm not expecting you to have a cure here. You're 82 with stenosis, long-term pain. I'm planning to give you pain management. I need to get on top of it 3 times a week for 2 to 3 weeks. And after that 2nd week, you should be seeing changes. And if not, that's all better, but really good improvement, then we'll continue. If not, you can stop. But if you stop before 3 visits, you haven't given this a chance. And then I sit back. And now that she understands, because she thought one treatment should be better, I told her, we're not going to reassess whether this is working or not until after the 3rd visit. On the 4th visit, we're going to talk. Now bring this into menopause. I find that people often see it on the 1st visit. They come in and that night they have a better sleep, but then they said it only lasted 1 night or 2 nights and then my sleep was terrible again. So I explained, we want to get on top of it. That's why we're going to do 3 times a week. We want to give your body a chance. We're reprogramming, we're recalibrating, using different metaphors of language, just trying to explain, we're regulating. And the goal is to give the body, bring the body into balance, and then it takes over. So when I remove my needles and my herbs, your body's back in balance, it's doing what it needs to do. That's the goal here. However, I need to get on top of it. And if we start at once a week, I think you're probably wasting your time and money and we shouldn't start. If you can come in, if you are willing, ready, and able it means they can get it to my clinic, they can afford it. So if they're not able, if they can't afford it, they're not able. It's part of the process. You as the practitioner can choose what charity you give and who you give discounts to, who you give free to. I just know that for certain conditions, and many conditions, if you can get them in 2 or 3 times in a week, you're going to see some shifts right away, and they're going to be motivated and want to come. But from that 1st week to that 2nd week, they only lasted 1 day. They may not even come back for the 2nd, and then the 2nd to the 3rd, if it's a whole week. By that 3rd visit, if they haven't seen something significant, they quit. They spent the same amount of money, 3 visits over 3 weeks, but no improvement, and now they say acupuncture doesn't work or you don't work. 3 visits in 1 week, you see you've changed, you've connected with them, you talked to them on many occasions in those 3 weeks, so you're educating them, and you're giving the medicine a chance to do its thing. Look, a trainer wouldn't expect somebody to lose all this weight in 1 week, once a week. A dietitian wouldn't expect somebody to eat 1 healthy meal a week and the rest not eat well and expect different results. Our medicines aren't strong drugs in most cases, And so it's subtle, and you use the word perfectly, Michael, momentum. They're on herbs. So the herbs for me are the main treatment modality. The acupuncture is just to get the body started. I want to see how they respond, because if they respond really well to the acupuncture, I know the liver mechanism, the stress mechanism is a big part of it. The herbs are kind of more on that deficiency aspect, building, nourishing, tonifying a little bit more. And that also lets me know how often I want them to do afterwards. Usually by 3 weeks, the herbs they've been taking, they're starting to do their thing. They've had the acupuncture and they're having some good relief. Then after 3 weeks, we decide, do you come twice a week for another week or two for acupuncture, or none at all? Do you come once a week? Most of my patients, after 3 times a week for 3 weeks, the following week they come in twice, still on the herbs. The following week they come in once. And if they're doing well, then we spread it out to every 2 weeks the acupuncture while they're on the herbs. And I tell them, for expectation, the herbs are 3 to 6 months. It's not 1 week, not 2 weeks. You're on the herbs for 3 to 6 months. After 3 months, we see how great you're doing. And then we start to say 2 weeks on, maybe 2 weeks off, see how they're doing, and slowly pull it away. And for my menopause patients, I'll see them, they'll do 3 months or 6 months of herbs, and then they'll be off them for 3 to 6 months. And then sometimes their signs and symptoms start to come back. They come back in, they do a little short series of acupuncture, usually just twice a week for 2 weeks, get back on the herbs. They do it for 3 months, and they start to know how to work with me and what they need from me. But the key is you got to get improvement right away, and you got to set expectations to the patient. So both those cases that I shared were pain cases. I just set the expectation. For this to work, in my experience, this is what needs to happen, how often, and for how long. And then I pause and I let them decide. They just want to get better. And so they will choose that if they really want it. Now, if you give them a choice, yeah, you can come once a week. I prefer 3 weeks, but you can go once a week. Well, I would choose once a week because I'm busy and I don't want to spend the money. So if you give it that way, they're always going to choose once a week, right? But if you say, I want you 3 times a week, and I'm literally saying, no, if you want to do once a week, don't start. We can get down to once a week, but for the first 3 weeks, we're not doing once a week. I'm a success hound.
You know, Lauren, this makes so much sense. I have people calling all the time, and they say they want to try acupuncture. And I ask them if they've used it before. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. But really the same thing. I want to try acupuncture. And I say to them, well, trying acupuncture means that I need to see you at least 4 times, because I don't know if it's going to be helpful for you. You don't know if it's going to be helpful, but you need to give it a bit of time to find out how it works for you. And then we're going to pause. We're not going to pause, but we're just going to take a moment and we're going to assess, how are you different now than you were before? We should both see some differences, which also helps with that motivation. What I really like about what you're saying, and I'm going to go start using this, especially with things that are acute, let's say some of the perimenopause symptoms. I'm thinking insomnia as well. I hear this all the time. Yes, I slept great for 2 nights and then it was not so good. I'm thinking, yeah, you know what? I should probably see them 2 or 3 times a week. I love that idea of 2 weeks, because after 2 weeks, if it's going to help them, they will know it. You don't have to talk them into anything. I mean, we don't want to talk them into anything anyway. We want them to experience the benefit, and then they can make their own decisions.
Yeah, when my patients have an acute episode, they book in twice a week for 2 weeks. Like, I have patients that I've had for years. They do great, and then something's happening in their life. I have a patient that in menopause and got separated, divorced, and she couldn't sleep, anxiety. So there's a stressful event. It's not so much a menopausal event, it wasn't stressful. And she just...
There's a liver adaptability issue.
Yeah, but sometimes the body needs support because there's a big life change. Like some changes, whether you have the resilience or not, you just need a little extra support. Some things are going to throw you off balance, and you're going to come back to balance whether you get help or not, right? Because you have the resilience, adaptability. And then often people will say, well, I like to get extra support or I want to come back to balance faster. And so she knew she was in a difficult life change. I worked with her for back pain years ago, and I worked with her in her menopause phase. So she was doing great. Now she had this insomnia due to an external stress, but she already knew to book herself in twice a week for 2 weeks, just knowing to help get on top of it to provide the support. So she became educated. And we as practitioners, we start now, That is like, Michael, I know you do a lot of acupuncture. There's people that do Master Dong and Dr. Tan's balance method. Look, if your method says once a week and it works, go for it. My style of acupuncture, I got trained in TCM schools, and the style I do is 2 to 3 times a week. And if I can get somebody into parasympathetic, I know things start to heal, right? And so when they're on the table and they come in 2 to 3 times a week, the points I'm using, they rest on the table, they sleep on the table. A lot of them wear their Aura rings. They come back sharing how their sleep is improved. So not only do they qualitatively feel it, quantitatively they see the data, and they just start to understand how the medicine works. So the part I want to share is setting the expectation. Again, you said it. I'm not forceful. I'm just sharing the expectation. It's not fair to the patient or to yourself.
Well, I'm setting the table. I really want to set the table for them so that they don't have this misconception that it's magic. I mean, sometimes it is magic, but mostly it's not magic. It's medicine. And like you point out, with food or training or studying, whatever it is, you need some time for the body to be able to make a change and hold on to it.
And if you weren't doing herbs, because some of you listening are only doing acupuncture, and obviously I'm doing diet and some supplements, I'll do a little bit of that, but I'm talking about our main modalities. So we're looking at lifestyle, we're looking at the big picture, and I'm talking about the modalities that you offer that people pay for, the acupuncture and herbal. If you don't do herbal, then it'd be same acupuncture, but then they'd be expected to continue acupuncture. If somebody says, I won't do your herbs, then I'll say, that's fine. It's going to be, acupuncture costs more than the herbal, so it'll cost more, but we can still do this, but you're going to continue acupuncture for those 3 to 6 months, and we're going to continue twice a week longer. That's all. So I give them a choice. I don't say after three weeks of twice a week or 3 times a week that they're done if they're just doing acupuncture. Remember, they're still doing the herbal. So I explain the whole thing. We look at their lifestyle, their diet, and we set up a plan. And in that plan, I explain the acupuncture and the herbal part, and we're able to monitor the signs and symptoms. Remembering, I'm looking at resilience and capacity, so I'm thinking kidney system, and I'm looking at adaptability. So if it was all, and to go back to the H word, hormones, what I share with them, so here's some language as well, because we do hormones in our practice. We have naturopathic doctors, so we do prescribe hormones, but we don't prescribe it easily, like just give it to anybody because it's so popular. We do our assessment and do a full intake, and the naturopaths decide if it is a good intervention for them. A lot of the times, if they're really suffering, I mean, it's life-changing suffering, these are a great way to give them some relief. But it doesn't get to the underlying cause. And here's my point, Michael, with this, is if it's a resilience issue and you give them estrogen and progesterone therapy, so they're not feeling their internal fluctuation, you're going to give them relief. We want this. So I'm like, yes. Like, I don't want women to suffer. So I don't want any of my patients to suffer. So I'm like, great. But then I share, I still want to address the underlying cause with the acupuncture and herbal, because you have a fire alarm going off that something's out of balance. That's what these signs and symptoms are telling you. The resilience is low, is the capacity. And the hormone therapy has taken away the batteries. The fire is still there. You just don't hear the signs and symptoms anymore. Therefore, you're not being annoyed by them. But underneath, the resilience is still an issue and capacity. So you don't have perimenopause, menopause symptoms. I use that in quotes because really it's not a pathology. But now when you become 70 or 75, other diseases will likely or can manifest because we didn't deal with the underlying cause of resilience and capacity, and hormones aren't going to fix that. And so we're not just looking for symptom relief, we're looking for good health and live long well. And so if they have a deficiency, if they have stagnation, and the hormones make them not feel the signs and symptoms the body's communicating to them, you've given them relief with the hormone therapy. Excellent. But you have not solved the underlying problem, and now they're going to have they could have bigger problems, more serious diseases later in life that could have been prevented. And so I educate them that let's do the hormone therapy so you can live. Like, let's get you sleeping again. Let's get you, like, I have had patients that move in.
Let's get you resilient. Let's get you adapted. And then let's use these other modalities so you don't need the hormones. And later your life is going to be better.
Sure. Or continue with the hormones if they make you feel great. We just want to deal with the underlying cause, because those hormones, again, aren't the main problem. Now you're not feeling the fluctuation. When hormones are fluctuating, it's stressful to the body. And if you don't have the resilience and ability to adapt, you suffer. Now you're not experiencing the change anymore because we've given you hormone therapy, but you still don't have the capacity, the resilience, and the adaptability, which will show up differently at 45 and 50. That capacity resilience is going to keep changing, lowering, and it's going to show up differently that hormone therapy is not going to solve for you.
Yes.
So I'm looking at it holistically.
So 60 will be different, 70 will be different. What does this mean when you're 80? I think that's a really, really helpful perspective.
So that's the approach here. And again, we have herbs for this, and you just go back, like some of the formulas I use, like these aren't fancy. Wei Tong, Shen Tong.
Lorne, actually, we need to kind of wind this down. I hate to tell you.
Let's wind her down.
We could go on for a long time, but I try to keep these shop talks kind of...
Let's do it. Let's wind down. Let's get to the point.
to the point, so to speak. So we could go on, and we love it. I know that you've got some great resources over on Healthy Seminars to help educate practitioners to help better take care of their patients. You want to tell us a little bit about what you have there that might be useful, people might want to check out?
So this population is looking for solutions. Chinese medicine can be that solution. We have a lot of courses, and we keep adding because I find this is an area that we can help, and I want to make sure we have all the resources to help you, my colleagues. So we have courses on menopause and perimenopause by Randine Lewis. That's really from a Taoist perspective. You're into the classics and the Taoists, where she's trying to address this without hormone therapy. That's a great course. We got Yvonne Farrell, who brings in the 8 extras and talks about real acupuncture treatments around this stage. We got David Hastings Lloyd. If you want to have the research and the language from neuroscience, neurobiology, he will explain what's happening from the West, reframe it into Chinese medicine, and then give you some research on the points and herbs so you can share with those patients that need to see the evidence and the referral sources that want to understand why the mechanism, why this works. That's David Hastings Lloyd. And Beck Holm also has a course similar to that where she goes into the herbs and acupuncture. So if you go and do a search under menopause on Healthy Seminars, you'll see a list. And then the SOM, as you say, again, if you can just treat what's really going on here, if you treat the underlying balance of resilience, kidney system, and the liver, I see it in my clinic, but can you give a shout out, because we have SOM on our website that you provided for us, and could this address these symptoms? I'm sure they can.
Yes, well, there's this Chautauqua that we had in 2024, 15 different practitioners talking about different ways of using it, different ways of thinking about it. It's a powerful way of using the 5 phases in the 6 Qi to re-regulate the physiology. Very interesting stuff. And the principles are simple. Of course, like many things, the practice is complicated, but the principles are simple. And if you like acupuncture, it's a great way to help your patients.
And so, like as Michael said, re-regulate physiology. That's what we're doing here, by the way, when we talk about resilience and adaptability.
That's right.
So on Healthy, we have many courses under menopause, and I would recommend the SOM program that Michael contributed to Healthy Seminars with all those speakers if you're looking to help your patients that way.
Great. Well, thank you for joining me today and kicking off this series on reproductive health on an issue that is really pertinent to many people in our practices. Always great to sit down with you. And just one last shout out. This is for you, my friend. Your book on marketing acupuncture.
Missing the point. What's that?
It's just a classic. It's a classic. If people want to learn something about getting their practices going and being a self-employed acupuncturist, it's a fantastic resource.
Thank you for that feedback.
All right. Well, until next time then.
Till next time.
When practitioners reach for a Chai Hu Guizhi Tang or Shao Qing Long Tang, they need quality that they can trust. Lhasa OMS supplies the herbs your clinic needs to be ready for the cold and flu season. Visit Lhasa OMS to source the classical formulas featured in this series. Use the code REMEDY20 for 20% off your next purchase at lhasaoms.com. Some exclusions apply. See the website for details. That's it for this episode of Shop Talk. Did you learn something that brought a patient to mind? Don't keep a good thing to yourself. Share it with a friend. They'll be happy that you did. And tune in again for our next episode of Shop Talk.